Welcome to PowerCon Day 2, and welcome to our panel, Heroic Masters of Packaging Art. Yeah, sure. I am Brian Charles Rooney. I am the co-host of Each Sold Separately, Collect Them All, the podcast for nerds and people who love them. We have listeners in over 50 countries, and we're only at 12 episodes, so go us. It's a good show, and it's actually unconventional in its honesty. So if you are a podcast fan, check us out. This panel today is incredibly important to us, to me anyway. It is full of people I have not met before, people I just met, and a few I've known for a while. And I think for anyone who has been a longtime fan of either Masters of the Universe or Princess of Power or New Adventures, there is a magic in the art that pulls you into wanting to be a collector of this line. I know as a child I was very young, and there was a holiday selection at this store called Bamberger's in New Jersey at Paramus Park. I don't know if anyone's from New Jersey. If you are, you know that mall. And they didn't sell toys normally, and they had a table with red sheets. I remember this vividly, and it was surrounded by black, and the lights were on it. It was like it was on stage. And they had a box with this incredibly epic-looking skull castle. And then there was a woman with red hair, and a man with a skull face, and an orange man. But the packaging, that red burst, that blue, and that castle were what caught me. And my mother, thank goodness, noticed, and they were all there under the tree for Christmas. And I'm sure that a lot of you may have had that type of experience and continue to have that type of experience with the packaging for this line because it tells a story. And these men are storytellers, and I want to introduce you to them. Yes, please, round of applause for these men, please. We have Axel Gimenez, Rudy Obrero, Errol McCarthy, and Nate Baertsch. I want to start with you, Axel. We've known each other a couple years online through the family that is He-Man.org and the Classics Collector community and PowerCon. And what first made me go, who is this guy? Was something like this. Now that's not packaging art, but perhaps it should have been. It should have been in my mind. But it made me go, this guy understands what this brand is. He understands what is going on with these characters. He was hired. Was this the first job that you did for Mattel?
For Mattel? No. Yeah. My first job was a mini comic.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the one of the samples of the Moduloc figure.
Yeah, for the box set.
Right. And can you talk about this guy a little bit? And the genesis of Fangor?
My baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the early designs that Mattel asked me to do. From a batch of 5 characters, I guess. Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a lost wave in a way, right? I mean, it was kind of a lost wave. There are figures that weren't produced, but this one was.
No.
Well, like
it was one new character from the mini comics.
Right, but I remember seeing a schematic of Great Black Wizard and Gladiator and
yes.
Fangor,
yes.
A couple others. And this one was
yeah. He's one of those characters. The first batch of 5 characters I made for Mattel. He was just kind of a spot in the background from a page from a new mini comic.
Right.
And then Mattel wanted to do a new character from that, and they just told me we need a new Snake Man with the feature of enlarge his fang.
Right.
And that's it. all of the rest is from my mind.
That sounds pretty typical.
Yeah.
I'm sure the other gentleman on the panel could probably speak to that later. And so you saw that come to life, and you did the card art for this as well, yes?
Yes.
And you've done card art for, well, this is for Super 7, who was kind enough to take up the mantle for a while. And you have done the card art as well for these, which are kind of
yes.
new for some people here, the movie figures. What was the inspiration for how you were going to attack these? Because it's one thing to look at photographs of the actors, but there were some other images of these characters, the movie, in comics. They were used in the Star comics. Did you look at those and kind of draw from all that, or just the movie?
No, just the movie.
Okay.
You know, I'm really proud of the way they came out, but it was a hard work because there are no many pictures where you can find any detail. So I have to go to the movie.
A full body and details that are shadowed. Yeah.
And I wanted to be very accurate with the details. So I had to look at the movie to take care of any detail, like boots, like, you know?
Right. Do you have, what's your start? Did you have training? Did you go to school as an artist, or did you self-teach?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I draw since I had memory, you know?
Right. And what as a child, what's, speaking of, since you had memory, what was maybe the first image from Masters of the Universe that really drew you in?
Well, you know, the art from these masters,
right.
You know, the box art from Rudy, the cardback from Errol. You know,
Same. Yeah.
Really, these people here, this legend, are the men that has inspired me to be the artist, and maybe the man I am today. Really.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think that it's an accident that a lot of the people in this community are actually pretty kind and thoughtful, and there's something about this brand, I think, that draws those people together. I don't know if that's been your experience, but the heroism that is obvious in the artwork is something that I think that a lot of people who are drawn to this brand kind of aspire to. I don't know if that speaks to what you mean, but you clearly have captured our lead hero quite well here. This is the Super 7 vintage, the Ultimates.
Yes, but you know, again, that art is inspired by the work of Errol McCarthy. Mm-hmm. You can see we can try to nod to his style. And then I obviously put some of my style, obviously, mm-hmm. But that art particularly was based on Errol's work.
Having the opportunity to work on these Ultimates and some of the other newer card backs, were there, you obviously had the chance to incorporate things like the Roton and Snake Mountain, yes, and the Palace Guards into a card back for a character like Tila, who was not associated with those things, obviously, early in the vintage line. What was like your favorite update in all of those Ultimates?
My favorite?
Yeah.
I think Skeletor one.
Right.
Yeah, because I could add Snake Mountain and the atmosphere of the scene, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite.
You also did the mini comic covers that were inserted into the Ultimates.
Oh, yes.
Which you can see vividly behind the figures. That's my favorite one. That's why I chose it. And I kind of want that table for our Snake Mountain playset.
Yeah, that's some kind of note to obviously Frankenstein, you
Very,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a well, and that's emblematic of the brand in general. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of references from other pop culture.
Yes, yes.
Iconic moments in pop culture history that Masters of the Universe has always borrowed from. So I think that's a really smart move. You also did the backs of the Club Grayskull figures. Which is pretty incredible because they look like they stepped off the cell. So you transition from the vintage Errol McCarthy admiration to Filmation, which is a testament to his versatility as an artist. And you've also been really, I think, not only helpful in giving these characters life, these newer versions. We had these PowerCon exclusives in the past, and figures that we didn't really have plastic versions of as kids, we now have in deluxe form. What's one that you may have not seen turned into plastic yet that you still want? I probably could guess.
Let me think. I love to work with those versions or even forgotten characters from the 80s, I think this wave in particular was really interesting to work with.
Well, you're the first person, I think, officially, beyond the McCarthy kind of original McCarthy cardback suggestions to give these characters an active life in the present, which is a pretty. It's a lot of pressure. Maybe, I don't know. I would think it was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a pressure, but it's an honor for me. It's like the year PowerCon made the Camocan figure. That was a variant created in my country. It's from Argentina.
Right.
And no other art was made before me with that variant. And I came to make the art for the cardback.
That's exciting.
And that was great, know? That means a lot. It's something created in my country and finally get officially, you know? And I'm the first artist to make that version, and that was great.
I would imagine. Just to be able to work on anything that you had in your life as a kid is amazing, or to work with people that you may have met as a kid that you idolize. And these characters are kind of like stars to us, anyway. I think that's an exciting thing.
Yes.
And then that's led us. This actually is the current image. If I would assume most of you know this, but it's the Slamurai and Snake Troopers 3-pack that's been available here. But that leads me to the very exciting Comic-Con exclusive this year.
Oh yeah.
That kind of threw me back to being 5 again, and started answering those questions to me of those Alcala comic books had these other versions that we didn't get, and here's a chance to kind of, at least in one instance, take a step towards that and revisit that imagery. How do you feel? Did you have an experience as a kid where you had any confusion about that? Like, why does this plastic toy not match the imagery that I'm seeing?
No, actually not. Because I think I understood from the beginning, even as a kid with the figures, that they were different versions of Masters of the Universe. When we had the toys, we had the cartoon at the same time in Argentina, and we learned the different version they had. And well, even as a kid, for example, I choose the mini comics, I fell in love with that version of Eternia. That version, the same version, the Dark World that, for example, Rudy gave us with his paints, even Errol with the Carbax,
Right.
and Eternia more darker, more barbarian war.
Very, yeah.
And I love that version of Eternia. So it's great to me to came again to make art in that style, paying homage to another master from those years, like Alfredo Alcala.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that page, you can see a homage to the Rudy paint for the Battlecat box art. I love to make that kind of stuff.
I thought that was really an intelligent choice, especially in that panel, that's why I chose that one, because I thought it was a really nice incorporation, and it's not a pandering moment. It actually works in the story that's being told there, and it's a nice homage. Really, really beautiful choice. Nate, you were nodding your head, so I'm assuming you had the same experience I did.
Yes.
A little bit of confusion. Why is Tila a redhead and not a blonde? Where's the green lady? Particularly for you, where's the green lady?
Where's the green lady?
I know you as the kind of hero of the Green Goddess. And you worked and collaborated with Axel on this exclusive as well.
Oh,
and
look
you
at that.
Designed the packaging,
Yeah.
which is absolutely cool.
Thank you.
Among other things. Can you talk about the process of something like this when they say to you, not just can you paint or draw a picture for use on the card back, but can you design a package for this toy that you may have not seen?
Right. In this particular instance for the San Diego Comic-Con exclusives, that much of the decisions were already made in Mattel, really. And so, I was working with Val Staples and working with Axel, and the art team at Mattel was anxious to have us on board and play in their sandbox, so to speak. So they had they had their sketches basically already done. So many of the layouts for this particular set were already kind of fixed and in place.
Okay.
The only area that I had room to play in as an artist was this actually particular piece. And I don't know if you still have the other.
Yeah.
Yep, these two samples here. I knew that Alfredo Alcala's artwork was heavily influenced. That was the direction from Mattel, as we want these to look like those earliest mini comics, those first four. And so, yeah, when I got the job, Val was describing all that, and I'm like, you just want me to paint like Alcala? Like, okay, sign me up, I'm there. And so, yeah, I played with a couple different stone styles for what that outer box would be. And man, just trying to match what he would do with his pen work was racking my brain. And I don't think I captured it very well here, but I tried. And then there was another painted set, if you go back a couple.
Oh.
Yeah, like that one, I was looking at the Point Dread and the Talon Fighter and the Danger at Point Dread, the record book, where Alcala kind of had painted some of the rock stone. So I was trying to do that, and the guys at Mattel were very much like, this just isn't feeling right. So if you go back to the original, I just did a rough mock-up of like, okay, here's a more realistic take on maybe what rocks could be like, and then infuse it with that power of Grayskull with those bright colors, and that's what they ended up going with.
This is kind of a dorky comment, but your use of light in all your work is particularly effective and beautiful. And it is, it's like a very obvious example on this packaging of that.
Yeah.
Even in, obviously a digital image is, it's easier to see, but even in hand, it's beautiful. And here's some more of the of Grayskull from you.
Yeah, and again, this package, I can see exactly why Val wanted to split our team up between Axel and I Axel would take care of the characters, and then I took care of the backgrounds because of the complexity of that package. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing working with those guys. And there were numerous times I got it wrong. It's like, okay, we just need to paint a scene just like this. And then, nope, now once we start folding it and putting it together, it's looking awkward. So we would have to adjust all kinds of things to move it around and get it to look right. At the end of the day, it mostly looked like straight up paintings, but you can see the die lines of the box and where they all fold, and it was quite the jigsaw puzzle to put together. And at the end of the day, I don't have the package, But if people have the package, you probably don't see most of that artwork that's in there, that ended up in there. But
You don't have it packaged?
Oh. I didn't go to San Diego Comic-Con, so it's okay.
Let's correct that at some point.
Don't worry about it.
I'm including this next image because you worked on it in the classics line, but I thought it was kind of funny because you and Axel have collaborated, and now you might be known as Mega Beast.
Yeah.
Because Mega Beast is the multi-bot Modulock conglomeration if you're putting them together, and I think that was kind of a neat point. You also worked on Icon Heroes, the Grayskull and Snake Mountain sets, and Point Dread add-on set, which I get the impression from that you had even more freedom, and it was really, I have that set, and it's beautiful. It's hard to find now, but if you can, you should get it, because it's actually a beautiful piece of art. But how did you get involved with them? Who referred you, and what was the relationship like with them?
Icon Heroes at this time was actually just starting out. They were,
Right.
It was their newest stuff. They immediately got licenses to do environmental statues and then office supplies for Masters of the Universe.
Right.
And they were very clever about how they did office supplies, of like making them statues without a statue license.
Right.
That's neither here nor there.
Like the card holder and the
Card
and the
holder, business
letter
card
opener.
holder that, it's also Castle Grayskull.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun. It's so cool. But my involvement with them was Pat Wang had a very close relationship with the Four Horsemen. And so it really came through my work with them, my previous work, just through their packaging and him seeing my artwork that way, that kind of got me in the door with that. And then also, if you'll remember, these environmental statues were happening before the classics versions of those play sets were happening. And so
Right,
they
yeah.
were working closely with Mattel and saying, this needs to, you guys need to work with the Horsemen on this and make sure that whatever is designed there
Right.
can cross over into the classic stuff. So in many ways, these were the stepping stones to getting the play sets that we've got now.
I remember people, especially when this one was revealed, being like, well, this is what it's going to look like when we have it in plastic.
Yep.
Several years later, but it's happening.
Yep.
And then this is this is Origins, yes?
No.
Oh, it's not.
Nope, that's not Oranges. That is Super Sevens.
Oh, they're vintage.
It's it's
Right.
the Ultimate, actually.
Oh, it
the
is.
Masters of the Universe Ultimates Rockburst.
You'd think I'd know, because I have all of these things, but I don't.
And they're all similar enough because we're all pulling from the same source material.
True.
So yeah,
The Starscape is actually that's kind of unique.
that's what was added.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And then you've worked on the Slime Pit He-Man exclusive for PowerCon this year.
Yeah, we threw these slides in just for fun, and this was one of those instances where obviously I was already tapped with, or I was already given what was an existing thing for 10 plus years for the Masters Classics line. And Val and the guys were like, well, we need to add slime to all this. Let's make it special. So I had to adjust my style to fit what was already there, just so that the slime didn't look like it was completely separated, or that it was, the point of this was just to make sure that it fit, that it looked like it was done all by the same artist.
Right. And going forward, you're working on this new Masters of the Universe WWE conglomeration as well, which is pretty exciting. There are examples in the booth, if you haven't seen them, at Mattel's booth.
Yep.
Were you a wrestling fan growing up?
You know, I liked old school stuff, like Andre the Giant and
Right.
Roddy Rodder Piper and
Same.
Hulk Hogan in yellow, not in black. But
Same. Yeah.
So yeah, I was familiar with that stuff, and actually a lot of these concepts here, again, were given to me on paper, so to speak, and the only involvement I had in this packaging was really just these early concepts as they were trying to prove their concept in-house at Mattel. So these are just some of the ideas that were being thrown around at the time, and then that's the closest one that they ended up on.
Right, with that ring that looks like it's meant for the middle of Grayskull.
Yep.
Now, as a kid, I would say starting as a kid till now, would you say that Masters of the Universe has been a pretty heavy influence on your work? I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, because it's pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. This is Mythic Legions, which is, yeah, I mean, the artwork for this has probably been a big part of its success, I think, as a line. Because you have to grab, it's the same story, I think, as the early Masters of the Universe. You have to grab people's attention, especially in a day and age now where people's attention is being pulled apart by 50,000 sources or stimulus. This reminds me of that, and I know it's not Masters of the Universe, but I feel like it's so rooted in that world, and I think it's a great example of someone coming out of that world and handing it off to some new people, some kids, hopefully too.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right to make that call. That, I mean, it is Mythic Legions, and it's very Mythic Legions, but both Eric Treadaway and I come from that same cloth, as it were. We grew up with Masters, and we both have the same philosophy behind what packaging should be. And you're exactly right. It's supposed to pull you into that world of what these characters are. And it's interesting because as I was working on this one, this particular piece, I first got the job in winter, and there were so many. I live in Utah, and so we have those big giant mountains, and there are days when I mean, there's glorious vistas around me, and I'm thinking I've got to incorporate some of this landscape into this world as well. And it's funny because at the end of the day, I failed. I mean, really, because the focus didn't need to be on the background. The focus needed to be on the characters and getting those characters up close and personal and giving you a feel of what it is they might be going through.
I don't think you failed. I think it is a success, and I don't know that I agree as a consumer that the background doesn't matter to those people, because that actually informs who they are. I mean, as a kid, seeing that box in the store, in any of these toys, really, it was not just about the character or the vehicle they were trying to sell. It was what's going on in that scene. Where are they? And how does that help me play?
Sure.
You know, that's that first example to me, and probably you and a lot of other people here, that Rudy Obrero created. It's Rudy's fault that I have a storage unit full of toys and a toy room full of toys, and that my son now is playing with He-Man, probably because he made me an addict. With this, Castle Grayskull. When you came on to Mattel, can you talk about why you went darker, perhaps, with this? Was that a directive? It's kind of a dark image, and it is not necessarily obvious that the castle is a heroic center of power.
Actually, it's really simple. That's an oil painting, and back then I worked in glazing, layer. So it's subtractive. Every time you put a layer on, it gets darker. So you keep on going until you're happy. And the good part about that time is I didn't have to show it until it was done.
Right.
I didn't get called in midway and saying, "Can you change this? Can you change that?" I was done with the glazing. And then when Mark saw it, he couldn't say, "Hey, can you make this different?" And I'm going, "Nah, because I work in glazes."
So not too many cooks spoiling the stew then, just you.
Just me and Mark.
That's
and that was the funnest times, the first few. Then it got crowded with supervisor thing.
There's the Wind Raider, the oil painting, and the background, again, what we were talking about before about the background and the characters being kind of selected for the background. Was that something that you had freedom to do, or were they saying to you, put this one in, put this one in?
No, because that's a 3-panel package. The top is the flap,
right.
The middle section is the top, and the bottom is, I think this one had a window in it.
Yeah, it did. Or
So,
no, the
should
Wind
have had a
Raider
window.
did not. It was,
Wind Raider was closed.
this one was a full,
Yeah, that one was full box.
right, and
The
this
other
may
one
have
had
been a different version.
Because this is a combo pack.
Oh, this is the 2-pack with He-Man,
So
that's right,
they
yes.
cut a cellophane window there, And what happens is with layout is, well, I have to dodge everything, logos.
Right.
Mattel had to put their name on it. I don't know why, but. And then I had to dodge that cellophane window.
Right.
And the same, I come from a movie entertainment background, and everything is focused on something. There's barely a bright, unless it's a comedy or a romantic movie, everything's very dark and fresh and blue. You notice? It's 30 years later, it's the same color. Anyway, so it's always dark on the edges, coming in. It's just to illuminate the main subject.
It's another example of the windowless box that Mattel started with for the Battle Ram.
Because I think they really didn't want to show the product.
Right.
That was my understanding. So they gave me free reign on, I didn't have to stay on model, which means they give me a prototype, but I'm not locked into it. I have to put the pieces in there, but I can make them look fast.
Right. That's probably very smart. I mean, that gives the child a lot more freedom and the parent even choosing the toy.
It's more fun to look
Well,
at.
this is worth this money. Look at this thing. It's actually,
It can go really fast.
right. It can fly.
Yeah. It can shoot something too.
Here's another one. This was a window box, I remember. And so your beautiful work is kind of crushed into the top of the top panel, but you get the full view here, which is really, I mean, all these years later, it's actually nice seeing these images perhaps a bit brighter and without the logo polluting it. With the attack track, did they give you a sample of the toy, or was that at that point were they that far
I got
ahead?
one, and this is my last piece for Mattel.
Right.
And by the time I turned it in, I couldn't figure out what they wanted, and I couldn't figure out what I did because they kept changing. This is when it got frustration level there.
I see.
And that was the last piece because I was pretty much done.
And here's the that's the single Battle Cat box art, and
That's
then
the first-
right, and then you did do the 2-pack, the He-Man and Battle Cat 2-pack, which is even more rich. But it's interesting because you have the Battle Cats, because it really wasn't until the cartoon and the a little later mini comics that they started singling out Battle Cat as a character as opposed to a description for a mount or a steed like a war horse or something. Was that the case? Did they tell you that, or was it just it your choice to show it?
They told me that they showed me this green cat, or actually it wasn't even green; it was black. And then they told me the color was going to be green and orange.
Right.
And that, to me, green and orange is kind of a horrendous color combination. You just can't make it pretty, right?
It's iconic now.
So is just the only way I could fix that was to make the cats fierce.
Right.
The scarier the cat, the less you're looking at color.
Yeah. No, that's a good
You're
point.
looking at
'Cause
teeth and
otherwise,
claws,
it'd
so.
be a cartoon.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's interesting.
You
This
try
one-
wearing green and orange.
And this one is yours as well, yes? The
Yes.
Zoar and Screech. But there's been a lot of contention online about whether or not some of the, I guess right before you left, there were some 2-packs. There was a Skeletor and Screech, there was a Battle Armor Skeletor and Screech, there was Tila and Zoar, and it seems like in some of those cases, someone else may have been hired to imitate you. But I'm wondering which ones are yours and which ones are
That's not mine.
Right, which is pretty clear. It's an imitation. I think this one is yours.
No.
No? Oh well. Then we'll never know who it was.
I can tell you.
Oh really?
That's not mine.
And the I know the Zoar Tila one was not yours. That was
I think
it
the
was
Zor
part, or
is
partly
mine,
yours,
but
yeah.
they stuck in Tila.
Right.
Somebody else did that.
And your association with Masters of the Universe did not end there. This is kind of a deep cut
Yeah.
but it's something that I love and I have, and a friend made, and then he asked you to do this, and it happened.
No, you know how it started? I had He-Man on a surfboard. He's riding a wave. That's how it started out in sketch form as a surfer.
Right.
It went into color as a surfer. Then I thought, I didn't want to insult the character.
Right.
So I made him more adventuresome and put him on that.
Oh no, it's great. Especially the background. That tower is incredible.
So I wanted to do an ocean piece. So it's not in the He-Man universe, but
it's also
I
not
just wanted to
common.
do choppy water.
It's not common in Masters of the Universe to see a lot of water depictions over water or even in water, really. There's not a lot of that. It's usually land, jungle, deserts, things like that. So this was amazing to see. It's actually the manta ray glider from Joe Amaro. He did 3D sculpts. Joe's worked on sculpting for a lot of different vehicles, especially the classics battle ram. I think he was a consultant on.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm supposed to tell
saw
people that, but it's true.
He saw the painting and he said, "Hey, I can make that."
Right.
So he did.
Yeah. That's and he did, and it's really cool. You were also hired to do the painting for the classics Wind
Yeah.
Raider, and that's an interesting thing because you work digitally now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how has that been? How has that transition felt?
It's slicker. You can get more definition and cleaner and smoother. That might be the problem, but there's so much space around the art simply because the box is oddly shaped.
Right. Yeah. Granamere has a
And
strange.
and I don't work
top.
in that shape. I just work in rectangular form. So you end up with all the art down here and all that extra stuff on top.
And then finally, Castle Grayskull for classics. Yeah. And there was a big contest or vote, I guess, quote unquote vote, to see who would be on the box.
My 10 got on. I voted for those.
Yeah. More populated than in the past. And what was and a different perspective too, which is actually really interesting, to be able to revisit this particular building from a different perspective. Was this more difficult, or was it easier than in the past?
It's always the same conditions. You have to dodge the logo.
Right.
They give you where they're going to put their stuff, and you put the maximum amount of imagery you can around their stuff.
Right.
So I had a Wind Raider flying on the top. They told me to take it off. I put them on the other side. They told me to take it off. I kept trying to put this Wind Raider back in there, but they wouldn't let me do it.
Let me ask you this question. This is a personal thing. During that time, there were several fans who wanted She-Ra on the box because we've never had a duo kind of box art effort. Mm-hmm. And Scott Knightlick at the time, the brand manager, said, "Oh, there's no room. It's not possible." And and some of us suggested putting her on Swiftwind in the Sky. Was that ever asked?
No, I was involved with that vote too. I just I put my vote in, and when I got the go-ahead, they gave me the 10 characters, and I was happy because my 10 was on.
Oh, good. That's good.
So no, She-Ra never came up, and I just
Isn't
needed
that interesting?
Yeah.
Our next awkward transition. Scott Knightlick will haunt us forever. The next artist is Errol McCarthy, who may be the most prolific, actually he is the most prolific Masters of the Universe artist today. And he is still going strong. He has been working with Super 7 on their offerings, and his pictures, I think, helped continue that story. When the mini comic wasn't enough for you, you had this art on the back, and especially for the first 8, when the first 8 card backs were just the figures, and then Mattel kept producing these figures because they were a huge success. And Errol, you got to do, create moments for these characters that helped us fill in the blanks a bit. What was your, I mean, I know the answer, but what was your experience joining Mattel, and how did that happen?
I went to Mattel. I had been a freelancer for a long time. I had known Mark Taylor, and he hired me. We had been old friends throughout that time, and I was doing freelance for Mattel, and we happened to move back from Washington to LA, Southern California. And so this happened in just exactly the right time. I think this Masters of the Universe started, 79?
81, 82? Christmas soft release in 81, and then full on 82?
I thought it was. Anyway, it was just exactly the right time and the right...
Or the development, yeah.
Everything came into place, and I like doing this kind of stuff, and obviously, and it was just a huge kick.
Yeah. How much
I
did
believe
you...
I was getting paid for it.
Well, that's always a plus.
I should have been them. Yeah.
Here's the card back for Zodak, which is interesting because it shows him shooting He-Man and Man-at-Arms. Did they give you any sort of character background, or more than maybe a few words, or did they kind of expect you to just come up with it on your own, besides just, he's good, he's evil, go to it?
They gave me a lot of reference, and I think most of it came from Mark. And this is so long ago, like 40 years. So it's hard to remember this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it really is. So anyway, it all came together, and that's actually one of my favorite ones.
Mine too.
And I don't even know if I have a color version of it.
It's
Although it looks like it should have been colored.
Web store and the
Right.
yes. I loved this one even as a kid because it showed Grayskull in a new way in the art, which was always a plus for me, especially playing. It was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do with this figure. Here's another one that was long time coming and an incredibly important character, the Sorceress.
Yeah.
And what was most interesting to me as a child was that up until this point, she was kind of a prisoner in the castle, and she wasn't allowed to leave unless she was in her bird form. And this was the first image that I remember seeing her extremely empowered. I mean, she's chasing Hordak, who's extremely powerful and frightening. And it was nice to see that, and I think you did, the interpretation of that is beautiful to me. Strong women in this line are just taken it for granted. We expect them to be. But seeing that illustrated for the first time was particularly potent. Do you have an affinity for the damsel in distress in art, or the empowered kind of warrior woman? Which would you say is more your favorite to draw?
I think the power of the warrior women was my favorite.
Right.
They were equal to the guy. And this is something unusual in those days, I think.
Very, yeah. I mean, even as a kid collecting it, you didn't see, back then in the 80s, you didn't see empowered women all that often.
Yeah.
Not yet. You just wrote an entire series. You didn't actually you didn't draw any packaging art. You'll get your moment. We're almost there. This is my favorite of your creations. It's Evelyn, and it's we were talking yesterday, and this image is in my brain for the rest of my life. I love this character, but it's also, and you said it's just evil, and it really is, but it's still accessible to a child. That's not easy to do, I would think. I mean, how do you make something scary but still accessible to a child and still passable for a company like Mattel, who is constantly assessing everything you guys do to make sure that it actually sells and isn't a problem? Do you think that that's something that just comes naturally to you, or do you think that that was something that you had to struggle with in any of these?
I don't remember struggling actually with it. I mean, it was just fun to draw, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing I really don't like about this is the fact they changed T-Man's neck. It's too short. So thanks to Photoshop, I changed it.
And you did the card back for the movie figures, which was exciting as a child. And then Hero, which we now have from Super 7. There's some more. The Hero, the Super 7 card backs that have recently been released for He-Man, Evil Seed, and the new upcoming Buzz Off. I asked Rudy this too, but the transition from just ink and pen to ink and pen and digital, I was impressed by what you said to me about
I love it.
marrying the
I
two.
love the computer. I wish we'd had one 30 or 40 years ago. Because I do it in pieces.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't look like much when you see all the pieces, but when you assemble them, it's wonderful. You can move them around, adjust the size, change things. Everybody loves it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible because I feel like people don't know that you can do that. They think, oh, it's digital, it's easy, it's quick, it's, it's disposable.
It's just better.
Yeah, I think these are really good examples of how that, you have the vintage Skeletor, which is absolutely beautiful. And then you have the new Super 7 Skeletor, which is equally as beautiful.
Actually, the wonderful thing about this, I mean, I like this one too, but I did it with Emiliano Santa Lucia in Sicily. He lives in Sicily. A wonderful artist. And we worked on this together. And I did the roughs, sent them to him, make adjustments, send it back to me, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally, I sent him finished files, like 28 layers of art.
Wow.
And it's instant because of the speed of light. When he's happy with it, he sends it to San Francisco and turn it into product.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and each component of that process, I think, is a real fan and really understands what's going on with this brand. Emiliano Santolucia, and then Brian Flynn at Super 7 making those calls. I mean, I'm grateful that you guys have kept this going. It's, and I think Mattel probably is too. This is, just quickly to wrap up, this is the Crimson Countess, which is a new character, kind of a fan-created character. I think a lot of people want to see her made. So thank you and it's largely due to your version of her. The idea is great, but what you've done, I mean, there's these playable pieces. The coffin lid as a shield is campy, and which is Masters of the Universe, and scary and brilliant. I love it. I think she's amazing. And there are prints of her. It's even more complicated and beautiful print than this at Errol's booth, so you should check it out and meet him. And meet Rudy at his booth as well. And Nate is at the Four Horsemen booth, and Axel is at his own booth as well. I'd also like to take the moment to thank Ann Hunter for helping put this presentation together. I'm in the middle of moving, and we found out we were doing this like 2 weeks ago, so she helped me a great deal, so thank you. And I'd like to thank the gentleman for being here today, for helping me.